Welcome back, everybody. This is your host here today, and we are going to talk about one of the strangest serial killing cases ever committed. This case occurred over a span of 4 years, from 1935 to 1938. In the 1930s, America was struggling through the aftermath of the Great Depression. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs were trying to lift the country out of the doldrums, but there was a long way to go. Times were hard and people had little money to spare. There were lots of hobos and transients looking for work and food. On May 12, 1935, a couple of boys playing near the railroad tracks of Kingsbury Run in Cleveland, Ohio, saw something horrible. They saw a torso lying among the rocks. A man's torso. It looked like somebody had chopped off his legs and arms and head and dumped the parts in different places. Police found 2 more torsos near where the first one was found. All 3 men seemed to have been killed by blows to the head, probably by an axe. The killer had then disemboweled them and hacked off their limbs. 2 of the men had been identified as Raymond S. Robinson, a 47-year-old steelworker, and Jerome C. Gill, a 51-year-old saloon keeper. The third man was unidentified. A few months later, in September of 1935, another torso turned up in Kingsbury Run. The police found the arms and legs, but the head and the rest of the torso were missing. In October, 2 more headless torsos appeared. Those 2 victims were also unidentified. The killings didn't stop there. In 1936, police found 5 more bodies in Kingsbury Run, 4 male and 1 female. 3 of the men were identified. 2 were unclaimed. By now, everyone was calling the killer the torso murderer or the Kingsbury Run killer. In April of 1937, 2 more bodies showed up. They were headless and armless. They were identified as Florence Price and Thomas G. McNeely. The police believed that the same person killed both of them. Then there was a lull in the killings. Not another victim was found in Kingsbury Run until May of 1938. On that day, a woman walking along the river saw a man's arm sticking out of the mud. She reported it, and police soon found the rest of his body. The man had been identified as Edward J. Ruchinski, a 53-year-old steelworker. He had been killed by a blow to the head, and his limbs had been hacked off with an axe. While he was still alive, the killer then skinned the upper half of his body and wrapped it in burlap. There were no more torso murders after Ruchinski's death. To this day, nobody knows how many people were murdered by the torso killer or why he stopped. Hello, everybody. This is your host again. So what do you think? Do you think you could live with yourself if you survived an attack like this? Let me know in the comments section below. And let me know what you think happened to the victims in this case and what you think happened to the killer. Police could not find any connection between the victims. Most of them were unemployed, either hobos or all of them had been killed in the same way. And the killer had mutilated the bodies in the same way. Clearly, this was the work of one individual who chose victims that were easy to kill and whose bodies he could easily dispose of. Police were never able to find any witnesses to the crimes, and the victims' families couldn't come up with any motive. One of the victims, George Hurry, had been paroled from the Ohio State Penitentiary only 6 days before he was killed. Could he have been slain in retaliation for something he did in prison? Was the killer an inmate who tracked him down? That seemed unlikely, since Hurty's head and limbs were never recovered. If they were disposed of separately, that would mean that the killer would have had to return to the crime scene at least twice after Hurty's death. None of the other victims had any criminal records or enemies that would want them dead. By eliminating possibilities, the police eventually focused on people with surgical skills, someone who knew how to cut up a body quickly and accurately. Several doctors were investigated, including Francis W. Sweeney. He was a well-known surgeon who drank heavily and was fired from several hospitals for being intoxicated on the job. Some of the victims bore strange marks, which may have been made by surgical instruments. Sweeney's secretary told police that her boss was unusually quiet and depressed in 1935. A neighbor said she saw Sweeney carrying a heavy bag down a dark hallway in the basement of his home. However, Sweeney denied killing anyone. He agreed to take a lie detector test, but it was inconclusive. He was never charged in connection with the murders. Another suspect was Harvey J. White. He was an osteopath, which is a physician who practices a form of medicine that emphasizes the musculoskeletal system. White lived near Kingsbury Run. A former patient of his said that White once told him he could cut up a body in 15 minutes. White also failed a lie detector test. However, neither Sweeney nor White was ever charged with any of the murders. To this day, nobody has been convicted of being the torso murderer. What about you, everybody? Who do you think was responsible for these murders? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. This case demonstrates how difficult it can be to solve strange crimes, especially ones that occurred during times when forensic technology is limited. Fortunately, forensic science has come a long way since the 1930s. If you watch this channel regularly, you know that we talk a lot about DNA testing. We've talked about how it's helped solve old cases and exonerate innocent people. DNA can help solve crimes in so many different ways. For example, it can help identify unknown remains. With just a few simple swabs, you can get DNA from bones, hair, saliva, blood. From this DNA, you can determine a lot of things, such as whether the bone or hair or other sample came from a particular person, as well as a whole lot more. What if you need to identify human remains that are badly decomposed? You can still get DNA from that. How about if the remains have been cremated? Still can get DNA from that. In fact, you can even get usable DNA from remains that are older than 100 years. DNA can be used to answer all kinds of questions related to identification. And that's not the only thing that DNA can do. It can tell us where a person was at a specific time. It can help us understand genetic ancestry and predispositions to certain diseases. It can even tell us what a person looked like. Using facial reconstruction technology, you can upload a DNA sample to an online service. The service will use the DNA to predict what the person looked like. It's amazing what DNA can do. And it's amazing that we were able to use DNA to learn more about the past and present. Thanks for watching. This is your host. If you enjoy true crime, please subscribe. And always remember, evil exists. Do good.